We're careful with the first moments of stories like this. Some nights don't announce themselves as dangerous. They arrive already in progress, already wrong, and you only realize later that the world was rearranged while you slept. This story belongs to Noa Ellison, a sound engineer who trusted precise systems until a room decided to lie to her. The first thing I felt was weight, not on my chest, but inside it a heavy, low-frequency pressure that made my ribs ache. My throat felt raw, as if I'd spent hours screaming into a void I couldn't remember. When I tried to move my hand, I couldn't. "Don't move," my father's voice said, calm, clinical. Victor stood at the foot of the bed, his phone raised. The red recording light blinked like a predatory eye. I looked down. A kitchen knife was strapped flat against my palm with heavy duct tape, the silver edge glinting against my skin. "Untape me," I rasped. My voice was a jagged wreck. "I had to," Victor said to the camera, narrating for an invisible judge. "We found you at the top of the stairs. Noah, you were catatonic, clutching the blade, swinging at shadows. I taped your hand so you wouldn't hurt us or yourself while we got you back to bed." "I don't remember the stairs," I whispered. "You never do," my mother added from the doorway, her voice a silk trap. "You're escalating, sweetheart. It's the sundowning. It's getting worse." Across the room, the mirror trembled, blurring my reflection. My eyes flickered involuntarily nystagmus. I realized peripheral shadows dancing in the corners of my vision. As a sound engineer, I knew the rule fear without sound isn't a breakdown, it's interference. From the HVAC vent, a whisper slid through. "Noah." It was clear then. This wasn't a tragedy of the mind. It was a heist of my sanity. Victor kept filming, and in that blinking red light, I realized some silences are far too expensive to ignore. It hadn't felt like a decision at the time, more like gravity. The woman I called my grandmother had been gone less than a week. The house still smelled like lemon oil and dust. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses on your ears even when nothing's wrong. Reed stood by the kitchen counter, rolling his sleeves the way he does when he's thinking through a problem. "Are you sure you want them here just for a little while?" I told him. "I don't want to be alone in this place." He hesitated. I noticed it. Even then. "They don't like this house," he said. "They don't have to like it." When my parents arrived, Margaret hugged me carefully, like I might bruise. Victor didn't hug at all. He looked past me, already cataloging rooms. "She would have wanted us together," Margaret murmured. "She wasn't your mother," I said gently. It slipped out before I could stop it. Her smile didn't move. "She was family." Ophelia dropped her bag by the stairs. "So this is it," she said, glancing around. "Guess you really got everything." I laughed. A small sound. "It's just a house." Victor finally looked at me then. "We took you in," he said. "Don't forget that." I didn't answer. I watched Reed load his suitcase into the car, watched the brake lights disappear down the drive. I told myself I'd done the right thing. I wanted familiar voices in the rooms. I didn't realize they were already rehearsing. Margaret knocked every night at 8:45. Always the same rhythm. 2 soft taps, a pause, then one more. "I brought you something warm," she said the first time, holding out a mug with both hands. Milk, honey, a dusting of cinnamon on top. It smelled gentle, familiar. "You didn't have to," I told her. "You're not sleeping," she replied. "Your eyes look tired." I drank it because that felt easier than arguing. Because grief makes you cooperative in strange ways. The first night, nothing happened right away. My shoulders loosened, my jaw unclenched. I slept hard and woke up late, head thick, tongue dry. The second night, my legs felt slow. I clipped my hip on the hallway table and laughed it off. Margaret touched my arm, fingers lingering. "Careful," she said. "You're fragile right now." By the third night, The room tilted when I stood. Not spinning, just wrong. Like the floor had shifted a fraction of an inch and my body hadn't gotten the memo. Victor watched from the doorway. "You dropped your glass this morning," he noted. "Didn't even notice." "I noticed," I said. "I just didn't feel it." Margaret brushed my hair back from my face. "You don't have to push yourself," she murmured. "Let us take care of things." "Things like what?" She smiled into the mug. "Sleep. Decisions. Later. Alone." I found a bruise on my thigh, deep and yellowing at the edges. I pressed it and felt nothing. That scared me more than the mark itself. From downstairs, Ophelia's voice drifted up. "She looks worse tonight." "Lower your voice," Margaret replied. I set the empty mug on the nightstand. My hands shook, just slightly. Not enough to spill. Enough to notice. At 8:45 the next night, the knock came again. It began as a vibration in my marrow, not pain, but a relentless, sub-audible pressure. I was at the bathroom sink when the air seemed to thicken, turning each breath into a heavy chore. My reflection didn't just blur, it shivered. My eyes were vibrating in their sockets nystagmus, though my drugged brain couldn't yet label the physiological trigger. The edges of the mirror dissolved into gray static. I stepped back, bile rising, down the hall. A smart bulb flickered with a lazy, deliberate rhythm. Victor's voice drifted from the shadows below. "The lights are acting up again. Noah, are you feeling unsteady?" My chest hurts, I rasped. My throat felt like I'd swallowed glass, the raw aftermath of the screaming Victor claimed I did every night. "It's the anxiety," Margaret said, appearing at the top of the stairs, her hands folded over her apron. She didn't reach for me. She simply observed, "You should sit down before you suffer another fall." Later, in the guest room, the 19 hertz hum from the subfloor subwoofers reached its peak. The curtains warped as if a heavy body were pressing against the fabric. Shadows in my peripheral vision detached from the walls, a known side effect of infrasound on the human eye. Then, the HVAC vent hissed. "Noah." Ophelia's voice, traveling through the galvanized steel, sounded ancient and disappointed. I covered my ears, but the sound was a mechanical vibration, rattling my skull from the inside. "You were howling for hours last night," Victor said, leaning against the door frame, his phone ready. "The neighbors will notice eventually. We need to make a decision about your care." "Noah." Before you break, I sat on the floor, my heart hammering against the invisible weight. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being tuned like an instrument. They waited until morning. Victor set his phone on the kitchen table and slid it toward me like evidence. Margaret stood behind my chair, close enough that I could smell the milk on her breath. "Watch," Victor said. "You need to see what we see." The video started with me in the hallway, barefoot, hair loose. I was talking to the wall near the stairs, hands moving like I was explaining something important. "That wasn't happening," I said. My voice sounded thin. Margaret rested her hand on my shoulder. "Sweetheart, you don't remember?" The clip jumped. I was in the living room now, pacing. My eyes looked wide, unfocused. I knocked a glass off the table and didn't react. "You didn't even notice," Victor added. "We're scared." I leaned closer to the screen. The timing felt wrong. The angles too clean. "That's not how I move," I muttered. Ophelia drifted in with her coffee. "You yelled for hours," she said. "Casual. We almost called someone." I rubbed my arms, feeling the bruises I couldn't place. My chest still felt tight, like the air hadn't fully come back. Margaret squeezed once. "Gentle. We're only trying to help you rest. Let us handle things for a bit." Things like what she didn't answer. Victor turned the phone face down. I stared at the dark screen and tried to line up what I felt with what I was being shown. The gap between them kept widening, quiet and steady. like something pulling me apart without making a sound. The house wasn't just quiet, it was digitally stagnant. I watched the stove clock blink 3 minutes, slow, a symptom of a network suffering from intentional interference. Victor stood at the counter, polishing the same mahogany surface with rhythmic, obsessive strokes. "Put the phone away." "Noah," he said, not looking up. "The screen agitates your nerves. It's likely why the system is failing." The system, I asked, my voice steady for the first time in days. "Cameras are dropping. Smart locks are glitching." He replied casually. "It's as if the house is reacting to your instability." It was the ultimate gaslight, blaming my mental health for a server failure. Then, my phone hummed. A message from Reed, sent via an encrypted emergency channel, primary admin keys revoked. Footage on a 2-hour loop. System heartbeat desynchronized. "This isn't a glitch. It's a lockout. I'm landing now." "Who was that?" Margaret asked, her smile a sharp blade hidden in velvet. "Reed," I said. "He's coming home." The room went cold. The front door's electronic deadbolt engaged with a heavy, mechanical thud. Victor finally looked up, his face devoid of warmth. He shouldn't worry himself. Victor said, "We're handling this now. I found it by accident. That's what I tell myself." Anyway, the shred bin in Victor's study was jammed, paper teeth grinding against paper. I knelt to fix it and pulled out a folded sheet that hadn't gone through all the way. Thick stock, legal formatting, foreclosure acceleration notice. The words sat heavy on the page. I read it slowly, finger tracing lines to keep them still. Total exposure $1.32 million. Private bridge lender? 7-day deadline. Victor and Margaret's names printed cleanly at the bottom. Signatures already there. My ears rang. Not sound. Pressure. Margaret's voice drifted down the hall. "Did you need help in there?" "I'm fine," I called back. My mouth worked around the words. Victor appeared in the doorway, eyes dropping to the paper in my hands. The air shifted. His smile didn't arrive. "That's not yours," he said. "You're losing the house." I replied. "It came out flat. The other one." Margaret stepped closer. "We were going to tell you. Once things settled," she said. "Once you were stable." The room clicked into place. The milk, the videos, the way they kept talking about decisions. Ophelia leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "It's not personal." I folded the paper and slid it into my pocket. My hands had stopped shaking. "You're not scared I'm sick," I said. "You're scared I won't sign." Victor's jaw tightened. "You owe us." Outside, tires crunched on gravel. An engine idled, then shut off. Reed was home. Reed didn't rush me. He never does. He closed the bedroom door, checked the frame with his thumb, then looked at my arms. "Show me everything," he said. I did. The bruises, the pressure in my chest, the way the house felt heavier at night. When I told him about the milk, his face went still. "Keep taking it," he said after a beat. "Don't swallow." That night, when Margaret knocked at 8:45, I opened the door with my shoulders slumped. "You look exhausted," she said, passing me the mug. "I am," I answered, letting my voice wobble. As soon as she left, I poured the milk into a ceramic vessel filled with sand Reed had set out earlier. The liquid settled slow and pale at the bottom. I capped a small vial and slid it into my drawer. By morning, my head felt lighter. Not clear, lighter. Reed handed me a rapid test kit at the desk. We watched the strip change color. "That's not sleep support," he said. I nodded. "It's getting stronger." We moved quietly after that. He installed a small camera near the pantry, angled just enough. I clipped a contact microphone to the HVAC duct and pulled on my headphones. At 3 a.m, the whisper came. "Noah." I filtered out the rumble, trimmed the low end, watched the spectrogram tighten. A voice emerged. breath and consonants lining up clean. Reed leaned in. "That's her." From downstairs. Victor's voice carried through the vent. "If she doesn't sign, increase the dose." I saved the file twice. The next night, I drank from the mug, let my hands shake, let Margaret touch my hair. "Good girl," she murmured. I smiled back and thought about timing. The state evaluator, Mrs. Gable, arrived at 7 p.m. sharp, the hour Victor claimed my sundowning episodes reached peak psychosis. Margaret hovered with a mask of tragic concern, while Ophelia loomed near the HVAC vents, ready to play her part. Right on cue, the floorboards began to thrum. The 19 hertz infrasound hit my chest like a physical weight, vibrating my retinas until shadows began to dance in my peripheral vision. Victor leaned in, his eyes gleaming with the anticipation of my breakdown. "Noa, Mrs. Gable whispered, noting my stillness. "Tell me what you're experiencing right now." I didn't scream. I didn't point at shadows. I simply looked at Reed. He tapped a single command on his phone, triggering a broadband system override. The house went dead. The pressure in my lungs vanished as the subwoofers cut out. The flickering lights stabilized. Then, the home's internal speakers crackled to life, broadcasting the recording Noa had isolated from the contact mics. It wasn't a ghostly whisper. It was Margaret's voice, cold and clinical. "She's not even ours. We don't have to be gentle. Just grind the dose higher until she signs the estate over." Mrs. Gable's pen snapped. She looked at Victor, then at the blue and red lights already pulsing against the curtains. The emergency wasn't mine. It was theirs. 3 months later, in our new apartment, I opened my audio software. The spectral analyzer showed a perfect, flat green line. No hidden frequencies, no hijacked signals. I closed the laptop and sat in the stillness. For the first time, the silence wasn't a weapon used to erase me. It was a space I finally owned,